What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit. Today's episode, we are going to be talking Shanghai Dragons. Part 2 of my Grand Finals team previews. Check out the previous one, which I uploaded earlier today, right here on the channel. Wait till the end of the video. There's a link there. But we did Seoul earlier today. Now we're going to jump into the other APAC team that has made it to the Grand Finals preview. That would be the Shanghai Dragons. But first, I would like to thank everybody for joining me. Thank you to everybody out there on YouTube for all of the subscriptions, all the support you guys have been giving me. It's greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel, welcome to OverTakes. I do Overwatch League content a few times a week. This week is going to be content heavy. We have the finals going on. But hit a like, hit a subscribe, and hit that alert bell if you like what you're seeing, hearing, and you want to join into the conversation. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. All right, let's dive into the Shanghai Dragons. All right, we know the history of this franchise. We don't really need to go over all of the things that have happened with the Dragons since Season 1. We know the history behind all of the failures in Season 1. Season 2 was a rebound, and this year is becoming the biggest redemption arc in sports. The roster is totally different than it was then, but this year, the Dragons, I was one of the people that doubted the Dragons coming in. I thought they would be okay, middle of the pack. For some reason, there were some things that did not click with me when I saw their initial roster, but then we had COVID hit, as we were talking about Seoul as well. So we didn't get to see them play the first couple of weeks. I don't think they played their first match until mid-March. Somewhere around that time, at least a good 4 to 6 weeks after the season actually started. Because I think they were one of the teams that they was starting in Asia while COVID was really, really tearing that area up. And so they canceled all their matches and all that to start. But once we started to get to see them, the first week they were kind of strange. They didn't do, fantastically. I believe they lost to Seoul that week. They looked okay, but they just started building up momentum. And by the time we started getting into tournaments and further into the season, and not much further, mind you, I'm talking like 3 to 4 weeks into April, then they started announcing the tournament stuff. It was pretty apparent that they were one of the, if not the best team in the league. They performed fantastically. I wouldn't say that they overperformed. I say they performed better than I initially thought, maybe because I wasn't buying into some of the stuff. And also, one of the things that goes without saying is that Coach Moon, who also just won the Coach of the Year over the weekend, has done a fantastic job with this team. He was given a lot of really good parts, but some of the other parts you were kind of unsure about. The main tank position looked kind of iffy. They had Gamsu, but then they sent him to Dallas, or however that worked, traded, released, and they picked up, that kind of situation. And they brought back Fearless, who was on the 0-40 Dragons, and I was fairly skeptical of that. I didn't think he was that great in Season 1, but he proved otherwise. He raised his game, and a lot of that had to do with coaching, and I believe that in coaching all the time, I speak about it on the show all the time. A lot of people don't buy into coaching in situations like esports, and I'm not talking about overall strategy. I'm talking about player motivation, player development, especially finding the things that people are doing wrong and help them improve their game. That's what, to me, that's coaching. And he does a lot of that with these guys. He had guys that were, let go by other teams. Let's just be honest. Void, Izzyaki, they brought over. These were guys that were looked upon as, disappointments. And he's turned these guys into a machine. Throughout the year, they just got better and better. No matter what the meta was, he built, and the Dragons themselves, with the players that they brought in, they built a near meta-proof team. Near. Not there's always going to be a meta where you don't have the guys to do it perfectly. But being able to do what the Dragons do, they might not do it perfectly, but they eventually get there. And then that was one of the things that I noticed throughout this year. Yeah, first week of a hero pool or first day, maybe even the first map, they look a little shaky. And then once they get their footing, they seem to figure things out very quickly. They have very smart players, very gifted and skilled players, and a coach that has taught them well. And they develop this just machine-like mentality when they're playing. They're great to watch. They're always, to me, they're fun to watch. They have incredible skill, incredible cohesion when they're out there playing. Just a fantastic team. And this is where it has brought them. They are now in the grand finals. They went through the APAC bracket relatively easily as far as the playoffs go. But here we are. Let's talk about what we're going to see from this team. Let's hit the roster, potential roster that we're going to see for most of the matches. There's going to be some variations here and there, and we'll talk about some of those guys in a minute. That helps them on this theory that I have that they're a little meta-proof. Not totally, but they have enough components to do this. When diving into the roster, it's just hard to find a flaw. It's a roster full of guys that have gotten postseason awards, MVP. I gave Fearless my comeback player of the year or most improved player. A lot of people call him the comeback player of the year. You got guys like Void, who was in the MVP candidate race. All kinds of role stars. All kinds of guys that just played unbelievable Overwatch all year long. So let's talk tanks. We're going to probably see, I would say 99% of the time, and at this point, probably 100% of the time, we're going to see Fearless and Void running whatever they plan on running. Whether if they get into Roadhog comps, they get into the Winston dives, or if they run any kind of double shield type thing, map dependent stuff, it's going to be Fearless and Void. These guys were both role stars. Unbelievable years for both of them. I thought Void was a tick overrated the way people were talking, but then I went back and watched, and he wasn't. Even last year, he was underrated a little bit when he was on the Gladiators. I think this is a huge, huge component of this team that makes it go. Next, we have the DPS. Now, this is where it could get fun. We have Fleta and Lip running most of the time, and if we get into a double sniper scenario, don't be surprised if you'd see some DM. DM is going to be in there, I think, if we get into a Widow heavy meta, or potentially against a team, especially the 2 NA teams, where you have unbelievable Widowmaker play from guys like Ons and Carpe. I think you could see some DM just to win that 1v1 Widow duel. He is the champion 2 years running in the All-Star game Widow on 1v1s, but he might be a guy you see in there a little bit more than you thought. But I think they're going to try and stick to their guns where you're running the Sombra comps. I think that is something that they do better than anybody else in the league. That way it gives you some leeway with Fleta. If you want to run him on Tracer, you could potentially, probably not right now, run him on Genji, Pharah, all kinds of different stuff. It opens Fleta up for a myriad of things for him to do. He is the reigning MVP. He has the deadlift named after him. I really don't know what else to say about him, except for he is just one of the greats. And right now, he is performing at such a high level, it's unbelievable. Their supports, now we're going to see some different stuff on the flex support. A lot of Izayaki. You're going to see Luffy in there too, and Li Jaegong. I think they're just set across the board. These guys are just unbelievable. You have any type of support you want. They could all play all the different characters and all that stuff. This is going to be a formidable team to go against. Just looking at the roster and not diving into strengths and what they can do to win and all the other stuff that I was talking about with Soul. Just looking at the roster on paper, after watching them all year, you're looking at this and you're going, my God, man, what are we going to be able to do to stop this team? They're just stacked. Now, let's dive into some of the things. Let's talk about strengths. One of their biggest strengths that I have from watching them is their cohesion as a team. They play as a team. They are great at shot calling, focusing targets, taking care of who needs to get taken care of first. And also, when the need comes up, they switch. And they switch strategically. They're just a smart team. They're probably one of the biggest brain teams out there right now. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, they are the best team at the Sombra dive. Especially if they're running like the Winston Diva or Winston Sigma with the Sombra and whatever you want Fleta on. Whether it's Ash or Tracer or you name it. They are better than that than any team in the league. Another strength is, as I was talking about the roster, their tanks are probably the best tank line that's left right now with Fearless and Void. You can make an argument for San Francisco when they have Smurf and Choi in there, or even Super and Choi. It's for that team, for me, it's Choi. He is the be-all, end-all. But as far as a cohesive tank line, both players playing at a really extremely high level, I have to go with Void and Fearless. They're going to be hard to maintain and manage throughout these matches for other teams, and this is one of their greatest strengths that they have. And of course, we're going to talk the king of the deadlift himself, Fleta. He is another obvious strength, and a lot of that dives for me into the versatility that he brings. Much like Prophet, except for this year on a higher level than Prophet, he can switch to any hero that he needs to. He can play any hero that you want him to. I mean, we remember he picked up Echo faster than anybody except for maybe Rascal. He is just unbelievable. And his partner in crime, Lip, is also really good. But Fleta, to me, is one of the biggest strengths on this team, along with the tank line. Okay. And that's not discounting any other parts because this team is just so good. But those are a couple of the main things. And then the guy who's weaved this team into this machine, and that's Moon. His brains, just his knowledge of the game, and the way he can adjust is a big asset. Okay, now let's talk weaknesses. Hard to find weaknesses on a team like this. But there are a couple, and they're a little concerning, but we have to nitpick a little bit here because these teams are all really good. They were way more consistent than Seoul. The rest of these teams have been. So it's harder to pick weaknesses out on these teams that are left. But one of the things that concerns me a lot about this team is they go down early. I don't like the fact that in some of these matches, especially the matches in the tournaments, in the championship matches and things like that, they had to come back and reverse sweep. Hangzhou and Seoul, they had a tight match with Seoul. They were a little wonky early, and then they picked it up and adjusted, and a lot of that's Moon getting them back on track. I just think that they have a little bit of that early game jitter kind of thing. It just feels that way, and then when they eventually get into the flow, they start to pick it up, and it's almost they have to have their backs against the wall, and they refocus and get back to how they played throughout the remainder of the year. And by that, I mean getting in there, doing their business, and just finishing teams off and playing like the team that we know that they are. That's one of the weaknesses I found. Another one, which is kind of on that a little bit, is going to be sometimes their support line goes a little too hard. Li Jaegong sometimes gets caught out of position. He's great. And these are minor things for me. Well, nitpicky things, I guess I should say. You know, like I said, Li Jaegong gets caught out. Occasionally, with Izayaki, sometimes I feel like it's kind of like Aim God. He wants to do more damage than he does the healing, and sometimes that hurts them in the long run. I mean, a lot of times it comes around and he is taking care of the team fight and things like that. But I think those are a couple of the things that really to watch out for if things start happening. I don't want them to get behind and things like that. I don't like that. It's slippery. You could mitigate that when you're playing Hangzhou, but if you're playing San Francisco, they're going to put their foot on your throat and they're going to end it. They're not going to fuck around, and they're not going to give you time to breathe to get your head back in the game. Things like that. Same thing with Philly, potentially Seoul, but that Seoul would be down the road. And one last thing, and this is also another nitpicky, playing passive a little bit. I understand playing passive to an extent. You want to see where your opponents are at, kind of feel them out a little bit, but sometimes they don't hit the go button fast enough for me. I like some of the teams like San Francisco, what they do, and even my team to an extent. In some instances, they hit the go button right when the gate opens and dictate the fight right away. They don't do the kind of the old boxing adage, feeling the guys out in the first round, kind of just dancing around, seeing what's going on. I want them to be more of the aggressor. They have the guys to do it. They have the players at the skill level to do it. They just need to grasp that concept a little bit more. It might be Moon's, philosophy to kind of feel out a little bit and then go in, see what's going on, and then take care of your business. But that's my look at the weaknesses. What can they do to win the whole thing? I mean, other than the obvious, and that's the play like you've been playing because you've been, beating everybody in APAC. I think a lot of it depends on being able to run the Sombra dive effectively and knowing when to switch off of it if it's not working against some of these teams. Some of these teams are obviously going to be expecting it. That Roadhog, little bit of Roadhog that they played in the finals there. If you have to bring that out, bring it out early. Don't keep it in your back pocket. This is not time for back pocket strategies. You have to win, and you have to win now. Also, on that note, going back to what I was saying, don't get behind. This is not the time to be falling down on naps and stuff like that. Come out, be aggressive, play your game, and dictate the pace of the game and what you want to get done throughout the whole match instead of falling behind by a couple of maps and then having to do this miracle comeback. You don't want to be doing that now. Come out, be aggressive, get your guys out there and, let Fleta do what Fleta does and get these guys just firing on all cylinders and taking care of business. And one of the last things I'm going to talk about for them what they have to do to secure a win is get room for Fleta. Let Fleta do Fleta things. He is the key to this. He has brought them back from the brink of defeat so many times this year. Just give him the room, let him play his game, and Peel and all the other kind of things that are going to be key to getting him going in these matches. You want him to be out there just feeling it, getting everything, doing Fleta things, doing his deadlifting. You potentially don't want him to have to deadlift, but if he does, he does. And I think be cognizant of the teams that you're playing, and if and when you want to bring in someone like Diem, who is going to be an asset in these finals, because you're going to see Widowmaker going up against Ons or potentially Carpe. You're gonna want this guy in there at some point. I mean, unless you feel that it's gonna screw with your chemistry, I don't think it's going to. Just pull out all the stops and do what you came here to do, and that's win the championship. They are potentially the best team in the league. All four of these teams are great, so it's really hard to pick one. We talked about Seoul. We'll get into Philly and San Francisco. Those are my keys to their victory, for them to get a victory, I should say. And then who to watch? Obviously, I'm going to be trying to check out Fleta as much as possible. I also would keep an eye on, like I said before, their tank line. If you guys are tank players, watch these two guys, Void and Fearless. Check them out. They're going to be a key component to this match, or these matches, I should say, multiple, over the course of the finals weekend. They're going to be super intriguing to watch. Also, I would say if they bring Diem in, and I wish I like the Twitch version better, where you could switch cameras and just watch from their perspective. They have something like that on the YouTube site, but I'm probably, with the time frame and all that, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and watching a couple of these matches is probably not going to happen. If you can watch Diem from his perspective, do that. I think it would be fantastic. just to see this guy go off, because he's one of the greats. Like I said, him, Fleta, the tank line. The supports are really good too. That's going to do it for my Shanghai Dragons preview. I'd like to thank all you guys for checking it out. Stay tuned. Tomorrow we're going to be doing Philly and then San Francisco to wrap it all up. And then Wednesday we'll have the whole weekend preview, predictions, and all of my thoughts on how the matches are going to go that we already know about. And then maybe where they progress from there, and my bracket, in quotes, so to speak. But that's going to do it. Thanks, everybody out there. I'd like to thank everybody out there on YouTube. All of the support you've been giving me has been greatly appreciated. I really, really mean that. I'm not joking. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Everybody that's new, thank you for stopping by. Hit a like, hit a subscribe, join the crew, and then that is going to do it. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody have a good rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you on the next one.